Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Ballast Exercise Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Trotta. I'm the founder of Ballast Exercise and the Ballast Exercise Podcast. I am also the owner of a gym in Toronto, Ontario called Striation 6. Love to have you come visit us if you're in town, either as a resident or as a visitor. We'd love to see you. I am an instructor for the Resistance Training Specialist program, and I have been an exercise professional for the last, 23 years. Had to do some quick math there. And it is my mission in life and in everything I do when it comes to exercise to help people like you feel, function, look, and live better through exercise. And that was the impetus for me to start this podcast. Hopefully, with what I share here in terms of my own experience, any information that I might provide, or any information that guests I may have on here might provide, and really some of the success that I've had with my own exercise process and leading people through their individual exercise processes. I hope that it reaches you, helps you, and maybe inspires you to undertake exercise in your life in a meaningful way and in a way that pushes you forward in a positive fashion. So, with that, let's get right into what we are talking about today. And what we're talking about today is the idea of solving exercise problems. And when I think of myself as an exercise professional, it was tempting to sort of go in the direction of this first podcast being like, 5 ways to, lose body fat, like sort of a catchy, clickbaity, so to speak, title and topic of choice to kind of get people reeled in. And I thought on it a little bit, and I thought, no, let's be real here. Let's set out right away doing what we want to do. And 5 ways to lose body fat fast isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel true to what I want to share, at least not for our first episode. What I want to talk about today is the idea of solving exercise problems. Okay, and this is kind of a unique framework in some sense for how to view exercise. Usually, the way people would state something like this is their exercise goals. What goal is it that you want to have? And that's not necessarily a bad way of putting it. In fact, I think depending on the individual, it might be a great way of stating what it is you're setting out to do with exercise, pursuing a goal. At the end of the day, whether you call it a problem or you call it a goal, it's still something that requires a solution. All right. So when we frame things in terms of solving exercise problems, usually when people set out to exercise, they're looking at a problem that they're trying to solve, or they're looking to embark on an exercise practice that prevents problems from happening in the first place. Um, in some sense, you might think of this as kind of a negative framework versus setting out to achieve certain exercise goals. And I might say, yeah, you could be right. Depending on the individual, though, the idea of running away or getting away, should not running away, but getting away from a problem might be more powerful than pursuing a goal. And when we're looking at triaging exercise outcomes, exercise goals, what might happen with exercise in the body, um, getting away from a problem or solving a problem might be the first step in pursuing a larger goal. And a lot of times, people won't get into the gym proactively. They'll get into the gym reactively to solve a problem that they already have and then embark on bigger goals in the long run. So I have no issue with framing your pursuit of exercise in terms of either goals or as problems. Today, we're going to talk about it in terms of a problem framework, just to potentially give you a new, not negative, just different perspective on how to approach this exercise thing. I say it's in any case, it's better to be taking action or to be proactive before problems arise than it is to be accepting and living in a way that is, in whatever sense, less than your body and being are worth. That's how I'll put it out there. So, I'm going to do my best to keep this podcast short and sweet. I'm going to do my best to keep it under 20 minutes. We'll see how we do. I've got some points that I do want to cover, but I am mostly riffing this. I don't have a script, and I do hope that you'll stick around with me so I can help you solve whatever problems you would like to solve with exercise. So, in my experience, this doesn't these two categories of problems to be solved don't encompass certainly don't encompass all exercise related problems, but these two categories of problems to be solved certainly encompass the vast amount of problems that, or a vast proportion of problems, I should say, that clients that I meet come to see me for. I'm not sure if that's grammatically correct, but we'll go with it. The first is weight loss. I'd say, I think the stat said 80 is either 80 or 90%. This is back in 2017, so things may have shifted. But Ursa stat said something like 80 or 90% of all people who join a gym, that's people who join a gym, not people who start exercising, but people who join a gym do so to lose weight. Losing weight is their stated problem to be solved. And we can get into whether or not the weight you have on your body is or is not a problem. We can look at that from an ethical standpoint, from a medical standpoint, but let's just say as a broad category, it's a problem to be solved. In my particular facility, Striation 6, and in my practice as an exercise professional, I also, and in some sense more so, not in some sense, I'd say more so, see a lot of people who are looking to solve the second category of problem, which is pain. Pain in the body, pain in the mind. And when I say pain in the body, pain in the mind, they usually go hand in hand. Someone who's experiencing chronic pain usually has some sense of emotional pain that goes along with it. But for today, let's say we're talking more about physical pain than the emotional pain that accompanies it. Okay. And I'll be referring probably more so to the pain example when I'm discussing my 3-step framework for exercise problem solving. Um, because it's a little more binary in some sense. Very few, if not all people who are currently in pain actually want to be in pain. Pain is a very strong form of truth, i.e., if you're feeling pain in your body, there's no ambiguity about it. Okay. Now, there might be psychological or psychiatric components to you feeling pain. However, that you're feeling it is an absolute truth. So that provides a bit more of a simplified framework for discussing this 3-step exercise problem solving way of going about things. So, getting into the framework, the reason I use this framing for problem solving in exercise is because, in some sense, I found most people's answers to the typical questions they're asked when they go to a gym to be too simple, or when they start exercising to be too simple. So, for example, if I meet someone and they're in pain, and I say something like, "Oh, nice to meet you. What brings you to my gym? What brings you to me today?" And they'll say, "Well, I'm in pain and I'd like to get out of pain." And I'll say, "That's the goal?" And they say, "Yep, let's get out of pain." And to leave it there, I think leaves a lot behind in some sense, because I might say something like, "Well, what is it about me or this service that makes you think you'll solve your pain problem?" Or what is it about undertaking exercise that makes you think you'll solve your pain problem? Because in some sense, if you're in chronic pain, there are painkillers for that. There may be surgical procedures to that. There may be other interventions that have nothing directly to do with exercise that could, in some sense, get someone out of pain if that's their goal. So, this framing that I use based on my experience as an exercise professional looks to tackle a lot of these difficult questions proactively, and for more of an impetus and framework for you to actually take the problem on, whatever your exercise problem might be, in more meaningful and effective ways, to create more context for you as an individual, rather than to just sort of state your goal and go about it in a way that 80% of people go about pursuing those goals. So let's get into this 3-step framework. It's really 3 main questions, or potentially with some sub questions or some different ways of framing these questions. The first thing I'd like to ask someone, and sometimes I don't use so many words, I sort of alluded to it already. What problem is it that you're trying to solve? So again, this is the person in pain that says, "Well, I'm in pain. I'd like to get out of pain." And the idea from here is for someone like me, or potentially that other voice in your head, that inner self you have, to answer questions that you might ask that self. So if I were speaking to you and you'd say, "Well, I'm in pain and I'm trying to get out of pain," when I in response to me asking what problem you're trying to solve. I might say, okay, great. And what would getting out of pain do for you? And you might say something like, well, it would give me some relief. And I might say something like, okay, and what would you do with that relief? And hopefully at this point, you might come onto something that I would say, and that you might even say is more significant. Well, with that relief, I might undertake tennis or hockey or jogging or some activity that you once loved again. Or if you're like one of my clients, you might say, well, then I'd be able to get on the floor and play with my grandkids. All right. Now that bleeds into the next question. This is a really significant thing. I've had this one particular client since about 2012, and when I met him, he was, let's just say for argument's sake, 50 pounds overweight. He'd had a bunch of surgeries on his back. He had a torn bicep, and the bicep actually has two attachments at the shoulder. So it was actually the bicep attachment, one of the bicep attachments on his shoulder that was partially torn. And recently, to our first meeting, he had held his infant grandson. It was his first grandson, and he had chosen for some reason the arm with the torn bicep to hold his grandson. And upon taking the child into his arms, he jolted at the pain and actually dislocated his infant grandson's shoulder because of the jolt that he made. Now, before you get overly concerned about this poor kid's dislocated shoulder, infants are very I don't want to make light of this, but basically the parents were able to get the shoulder back in place with no harm, no foul, because of the child's infant state. But my client's son did say to him, "You are not holding this child again until you address your health." And while that might seem harsh, it certainly gave my client, who still sees me once a week and now works out on his own 4 other days per week, 3 or 4 other days per week, the forget motivation, the implicit drive, the commitment to make his health that much better. And that bleeds into question two, or part two, of this 3-step framework. So when we're looking at problem one, what problem are you trying to solve? Well, I want to do the things and be with the people that make my life meaningful. I want to connect with others. I want to um, live as my true self in a body that reflects what my mind and my person and my individual drives want to do. I want a body that is able to keep up with my truest and deepest desires to connect with people and live in this world in a certain way. Now, that seems a little, what's the word, esoteric, I guess. At the same time, if you can make it concrete, like get on the floor and play with your grandkids, hold your grandkids, or hold your kids, play with your kids, or connect with your closest friends in your running group or in your other physical activity, or just get in your garden and really find that zen that you found in your garden without back pain. These are meaningful problems to solve, and that bleeds into, like I said, part two of the framework. Why are you trying to solve it? Or what is it that would allow you to commit to taking this problem on in a truthful and serious way? So if we go back to the pain paradigm, yes, you could take some sort of pain medication to get rid of your pain. And that might solve the superficial problem of, yes, currently I'm in pain and now I take this, ibuprofen or naproxen or something stronger, and the pain goes away. And maybe I'm even able to do some of those things that I desire to do that I couldn't do while I was in pain. But does it solve the problem? Now, I'm not saying that pharmaceutical and medical interventions are without merit. Okay. I'm not saying that medication and surgery and other forms of medical treatment are without merit. They absolutely are, and they have their place. And to be honest with you, for myself as an exercise professional, the right medical or paramedical intervention on a client with whom I'm working with in an exercise capacity can be like Christmas morning for both of us, or just a joy for both of us, because it might create the space to get some meaningful work done in an exercise setting without as much pain and inflammatory issues to deal with. However, we still need to get to the root of the problem. And by the way, medical interventions absolutely can help get to the root of the problem. Something more superficial, taken as a sort of throwaway solution, though, like a pill, not prescribed, not in the context of any sort of longer term solution, doesn't really take on the problem on any sort of truthful and serious way. It sort of kicks the can down the road. It gets you more into debt with your problem in some sense. If you want to go through that analogy, it's like making a minimum payment on a credit card that has a high balance on it. Yes, you made, you put a little dent in it, but if you go and overspend next month, the problem's going to persist and it's going to get worse even with your little dent. So by taking on the problem in a truthful and serious way, what I mean to ask is, what is it that would allow you to see this thing as it is and do the things that you need to do to resolve it in as effective and in as permanent of a way as you possibly can? Right? Now, these are deep questions, and in the on the subject of pain, it might mean seeing a whole bunch of different medical and paramedical practitioners to assess for any soft tissue or skeletal injuries that you might have. Okay. It might mean looking at exercise in a different way other than just doing it. In my experience, just doing it might get you off the couch, but after that, just doing it just doesn't cut it. Okay. And that's not a slag at Nike at all. Love the brand. However, the slogan runs out of oomph, in my opinion, past the getting you started point. So I hope it does get you started. But just doing it just doesn't cut it past a certain point. We need to take these problems on in serious ways, in considerate ways, in ways that allow you to rigorously assess what is actually effective in terms of creating permanent solutions to the problems that you're trying to solve. In the case of pain, surgical intervention might be part of a permanent solution. A certain way of looking at exercise might be part of a permanent solution. A certain type of medication or supplement or shift in your nutrition might be part of a permanent solution. For me, there are certain foods, I'll just relay my own experience. Believe it or not, there are certain foods that I eat that create an inflammatory response, that create um, chronic pain, chronic in the sense of as long as I'm eating these foods on a regular basis, I experience pain. Now, that pain manifests in certain areas of my body, and it tends to be in areas of my body where my muscle system isn't working as well. So I could make the argument that maybe if my muscle system was working better, that the food would be no factor. At the same time, it's just not the way it is right now. And my preference would be to simply avoid what causes the inflammatory response so that I can continue to work on my muscle system, continue to work on my physical system as a whole without having to fight the extra inflammatory issues that come with making what are just genuinely bad food choices. So that's getting a little bit into the weeds there. But they're just examples that I'm tossing out as ways that you might consider how to take on your exercise related problem or the problem that you're trying to solve through exercise in a meaningful, truthful, and serious way. And then I'm going to borrow from some psychology that I really liked. And just so we're clear, I'm no psychologist. A lot of my clients joke that I'm their therapist. That's certainly not my intention. I think what they mean by that is I just keep my ears open and my mouth shut for the most part and focus on exercise and maybe add an empathetic look or statement here and there. My my contention is as an exercise professional, I should mostly be focused on the exercise. But borrowing from psychology here, getting back to the third step in this exercise problem solving paradigm, the last question I'll ask you is, what is the smallest incremental step that you can take and are willing to take that you have not taken yet that has a probable chance of making your situation better? Okay, I'm going to read that again or say that again. I hope exactly as I said it the first time. What is the smallest incremental step that you can take that you have not yet taken that has a probable chance of making your situation better? When I say probable, I mean it literally a greater than 50% chance of making your situation just a bit better. Okay. And when I say the smallest incremental step, what I mean is the smallest incremental step that you can handle. A lot of times when people take on exercise, especially if they take on exercise, whether it's sort of outwardly framed or literally framed like this in their minds or not, when they take on exercise to solve a problem, there tends to be something that a psychological professional that I know likes to refer to as pole vaulting, where they go from not doing anything, forget anything meaningful, just not doing anything to help their exercise related problem at all, to doing absolutely everything. They throw the kitchen sink at this. And this tends to, in my experience, not as a professional diagnosis, but in my experience, um, create a negative effect wherein it's not sustainable. Okay. You change your exercise, your nutrition, your sleep, your water, the way you communicate with people, all this, your social circle, you change this stuff all at once. And it's just too much for you as an individual, as a self, as an ego to handle. So you not only go back to your original unproductive, unhealthy ways, you go back to them with a vengeance. And that is not good. Okay. So when I say is what is the smallest incremental step that you can take? It means the smallest incremental step that you can take, that you can actually handle, that you can sustain, that you're willing to do. That's the real part of it. What are you willing to do? So in the case of exercise, it might be something as simple as Googling, gyms in my area that can help with pain, or Googling something like what exercises are available for back pain, or what personal trainers in my area are known to help with pain issues. These are, this is a simple step, and it could just be like, oh, you see striation 6 or whomever might be in your area. Great. Now you have some information. Now you can go on to the next step. With other exercise related problems, let's briefly jump to weight loss. It might be something as simple as um, replacing half of the juice and pop or soda, if any Americans are listening, with water. It might be going for a 5-minute walk the next morning. Forget every morning. Going for a 5-minute walk tomorrow morning, or going for a 5-minute walk right now. And that might be more exercise than you've done in the last 1 to 27 years. And good for you for taking that small incremental step. So, what is the smallest incremental step that you can take that you have not yet taken that has a probable chance of making your situation better? And then, after you've taken that first step, well, then what's the next incremental step that you're willing to take that you can sustain? Okay, so if drinking more water is sustainable, great. Can you now add more vegetables to your food? And by the way, that's a good thing to do whether you're looking to lose weight or you're looking to get out of pain, creating sort of an anti inflammatory response in your system. Now, this is individual. I'm certainly not making any nutrition recommendations. I am not a nutritionist. What I'm saying is a lot of times the things that make the system better, make the system, the physical system, the human system better, make the human system better for an array of problems that you may be trying to solve through exercise. I think that's probably a good place to stop. I have almost certainly gone over 20 minutes. I hope you have found this information helpful. I will be putting out more podcasts. My aim is to put out 1 to 2 per month. 2 per month is really where I'm aiming at. And excuse me for bumbling over this last part. If you did enjoy this podcast, if you found it useful, I would encourage you to subscribe for so that you can get to more get all the episodes that are newly uploaded on a weekly or semi-weekly basis. And if you think that this might help a friend, colleague, or family member of yours, I would also encourage you to please forward this to them. Let them know that I am here to help them, and as I'm here to help you feel, function, look, and live better through exercise. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening.